Mark here again, cooking books, bringing information. So real quick, I spoke about Gideon's mindset. Now we want to talk about Saul's mindset. In the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, chapter, what is it? Chapter 9. Yeah, chapter 9, verse 21, right? So we saw what happened with Gideon. If you guys go back to my previous video, several previous videos, I talked about Gideon, the Gideon mindset. The Gideon mindset is prevalent, right? It's prevalent in today's society as it was in ancient days, in biblical times, because Saul expresses the Gideon mindset as well. Here, Samuel appears to Saul and tells Saul that God's going to use him and anoint him as the king, right? He's going to be the king, and he's going to also overthrow the rule of the Philistines. And listen to what Saul says. And the Bible says in verse 21, chapter 9, 1 Samuel. And Saul answered and said, "Am not I a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin?" Now let's not so much translate that, but let's just bring that up to speed in terms of everyday language, today's everyday language. Samuel says to Saul, "Yo, you're about to be anointed king. We're going, God's going to use you to free Israel, to liberate Israel from the Philistines." And Saul's response is, "Well, how is that possible? I'm a Benjamite. I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. And we're the smallest tribes. We're the smallest of the tribes. Of all 12, my tribe is the smallest tribe. And I come from the family that is the least in the tribe." How interesting that the word least is being used by both Saul and Gideon. When Gideon was called, he said, "I'm the least of my father's house." Saul is saying, "My family is the least of all the tribes. I come from the smallest tribe." So here we go again, folks. We see the inferiority complex in men of God that are called to do God's bidding, or to do God's commandment, or to fulfill their purposes. It is a universal, ecumenical, psychological illness that is embedded in the DNA of human beings. The reason why I said embedded in the DNA is because I want you guys to put this in its proper context. We're talking about ancient and biblical times here. And yet today, in today's 21st century, you and I still grapple with this self-limitation, self-sabotatory, and self-mitigating ideology. Today, you and I can say the reason why us as black folks, we limit ourselves because of Jim Crow. We doubt ourselves because of the Willie Lynch letter. We doubt ourselves because of slavery. We doubt ourselves because of legislation. We doubt ourselves because of gentrification. We doubt ourselves because of all these ills that we find in society that has been inculcated and inoculated into the depth of our psyche, and therefore we limit ourselves and we doubt ourselves. But nay, that is not the truth. I'm using nay because I'm reading the Bible, and that's, Shakespearean for no. So that's not the truth. Because if it was solely predicated or based upon legislation, gentrification, racialization, profiling, and all the other ills that we face today, then why is it Saul is saying, "I am the least of my tribe. My tribe is the smallest"? Why is Gideon saying, "I'm the least in my father's house. My family is the poorest"? Folks, it is embedded within the DNA. It is something deeper. It is what I am trying to explain to you. Me studying this takes it to a whole nother level right now. Like, my mind, there's so much going on. I'm just trying to figure out how to articulate it, and it comes across in a intelligible way where it can be intelligently understood and received. It is far deeper than any legislation why you are the way you are. And this truth, what I'm about to tell you, should open up certain crevices or cracks or certain areas of your psyche, of your mind, to make you come out of that chain or that prison of your own thinking. It should shift. There should be a paradigm shifting in the psyche when we finish this discussion, hopefully. It is what limits you? What holds you back? What makes you doubt yourself? What causes you to hesitate, to be hesitant, is not what party is in power. It is not what legislation is coming down the pipelines. It is not the results of gentrification. It is not the results of the dilapidated school system. That is a superficial, a superficial and specious justification or reasons for why we doubt ourselves as collectively as a whole. The reason why I say it's specious, because specious simply means there is an element of truth, but when you scratch to the surface, there is some lies there. There's some subterfuging, some chicanery, some trickery, some skullduggery going on. It's not authentically true. So there is that argument that people would make that, redlining, for instance, is why we are in the state that we're in. There is some truth to that. Gerrymandering is the reason why we're in the state. There is some truth to that. The unscrupulous practices of banks and corporations are the reason we are. There is some truth to all of that. But it's specious because in these biblical times, there was no gerrymandering for Saul to say, I am the least. For Gideon to say, I am the poorest. They had their own challenges. Yes, be that as that may be. But the greater truth that we all need to understand is that embedded within our DNA, embedded within our subconscious thinking, and I don't want to say subconscious thinking, I want to stick with DNA, your genes, your genetic code. Your DNA, your genes is responsible for our shape, manufacturing, development, and this is just a superficial explanation of what the genetic code does. We can discuss genetics another time. But be that as that may be, understand that your DNA is responsible for your phenotype, your physical features. Your genetic code, within your code, carries all the instructions of how you're going to behave, how you're going to manufacture yourself, manifest yourself, how you're going to conduct yourself. In your DNA lies that information. So that's why I'm going to the DNA and saying within our DNA, there is something that naturally, without you trying, naturally inhibits and prohibits you from believing in yourself. And I say that, and I use this as evidence because I want to back up what I say with evidence. The evidence is this, that here we have two great leaders. Gideon became a mighty, mighty warrior and liberated Israel from the Midianites. Saul became a mighty warrior and liberated Israel from the Philistines and amongst others. Ammonites, I believe, and others. Ammonites, right. So, but yet still at their calling, right, when they were called, when they were instructed, when they were ordained as to what they were to do, these men doubted themselves. These men doubted themselves. These men did not believe in themselves. These men actually were looking at their current conditions and or their circumstances. They were looking at their impoverished conditions. They were looking at their status in society. When he says, my family is the smallest family of all tribes, that is the equivalence of you and I today saying that we are not the lawyers of society. We're not the doctors. We're not the privileged Ivy League educators. We are not the CEOs of the elite banking system. We are not we do not fill the seats of that bifurcation of Congress where you have two chambers. We do. Our forefathers, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, our fathers, our mothers, our aunts, are not occupying. They're not incumbents in these seats of power. So therefore, status-wise, in today's society, you and I, we are the least. So they were judging themselves based off their current conditions. He says, my family is the least of all the families of the tribe. That's the equivalence of you and I again, saying we are the outcast. We were raised in projects. We are the least of our society. The word dregs, D-R-E-G-S, dregs, means the bottom of the, when wine or some kind of liquor is made, the bottom, there is the residue, the remnants of the process of making wine. The remnants is called the dregs because that's the part that you don't want. That's the part after the wine is pressed and it's made, you throw out the dregs. The dregs is the residual parts, the remnants that's used to, you throw that out. That's what we're considered in today's society. A lot of us, the dregs of society, are people who are considered not worthy, people who are not considered contributing factors, constructively contributing factors to their society. I think that is the textbook definition. That's how we correlate this with this here, and we have to see that within the society, a lot of us are this is how we see ourselves. So these men saw themselves that way, and they judged themselves that way. But yet, God was still able to raise these men up and to use them in a mighty, mighty way. So Gideon doubted, and Saul doubted. The question is, will you continue to doubt? Till next time, Mark here, cooking books, bringing information. Peace.